My dad wouldn't let me play in a band, so I ran away from home.
What did he have against you playing in a band?
He said my grades dropped because I was in a band, and I wasn't a really nice person to be around because he wouldn't let me play in a band. So I ran away from home to do a demo. Yeah.
I mean, did you get very far? Did you sort of get to the end of the street and then...
Well, I didn't get very... I didn't get... No, I mean, I ran away.
When I was a kid, I was about 5 or 6 years old. I went to the cinema with my mother, and we watched a movie called Jock of the Bushveld, and it was this story about this man who rescues this runt of the litter that's being drowned, I believe, in a bucket. At the very end of the film, and the song played by Johnny Clegg and Savuka, and it was called Spirit of the Great Heart. And I cried during that scene, obviously, because I was a kid. And I remember for like 6 months to a year after that, every time that song came on the radio, the memory that was tied into that was so powerful that I always cried, and it was the visual with the just the feel of the song. So that started it. And then I listened to everything. When I was about 12, 13 is when I heard, Nevermind. And I went home and played that CD from start to finish 12, 13 times, and pretty much, made up my mind on the spot that that's what I wanted. I wanted to learn how to play these songs, and I wanted to learn how to play like that. And I never looked back.
I joined another band, which became this band. I was a rhythm guitarist in a band with a female vocalist on keyboards, and then a guitarist, or a lead guitarist. I was a rhythm guitarist, and there was a bassist and a drummer. At the time, I didn't really ever picture it going anywhere, but I was in that band, and he was in the band he was in. What was your band called?
No Offense.
No Offense, that's right.
Cut forward to probably 5 or 6 months later, and our bassist at the time decided to quit. Had some sort of meltdown or whatever, and we had a gig coming up, the drummer and I, and we were desperately in search of a bassist, and I knew Dale could play bass, so I was like, well, I know this one guy.
He called me up, and we did like a rehearsal, and they made me learn 18 songs in like 3 days or something, and we played our first show, and it was cool. It just worked.
And there was one DJ on at nighttime in South Africa who was very, very instrumental in exposing us to new music. We gave him a demo of 17, probably the same 17 tracks we gave Dale to learn, to be honest. And then we would record them, and all he wanted in payment was McDonald's. Of course, that changed once we got signed. A week after we give him the demo, he's like, man, you guys got to hear this new band, Saron Gas. And he starts playing one of the songs. I go, oh, this is so cool. He's playing one of our songs. And then the next night he does it again, but he plays another one. And then the next night he plays another one. And then the next night he plays another one. So he starts this sort of like this underground rumble for us. And it doesn't really translate at that point to more people coming to the shows, but it does get the attention of the actual PDs and the radio programmers of the daytime shows. We didn't have a band name, and it had been weeks of recording with this guy John in his jingle studio. And he said, "Look, you guys need something. You need a name." So he had a vault full of sound effect CDs, and they all had kind of interesting titles. So we just picked a bunch of them, threw them in a hat, and drew out Saron Gas, and that's how it became the band name. So it was this cool little thing we did, and it was just us chipping away. So we built up the 16, 17 song back catalog, if you will. And the next thing is we've got the song on the radio. It starts charting. People believed in us that had the power to expose us to other people without any money, with no advertising dollars. I mean, if you kind of think about it, it's a pretty. I mean, it's a bizarre story, but that's how we ended up.
We got a phone call from our manager in June of 2001, and Wind Up Records had called and said they wanted to fly us out to New York for a showcase. It wasn't necessarily that we had much of a choice in the move, It was either move and do music or don't move and not do music. So it was really, again, it's like something that I've been wanting to do my whole life.
I was a young guy, and I was ready to do whatever it takes, just being given an opportunity like that, something we've been working for so long, it was definitely a no-brainer. I was ready to get on that plane and go overseas and see what it's all about.
They've already got us now.
We get to New York City with basically a little piece of paper with an address on it. It's like right off Times Square. We asked the label, we're like, hey, what's the rent on that place? And they're like, oh, it's like $7,500 a month. The next month rolled in. We were basically got a phone call like, hey, your plane leaves in like a couple of hours. There's a change of plans. We're now recording in LA with Jay Baumgartner. So
right before the move to LA, our drummer, who was coming up on 40 years old, he was really homesick, and he was gone. And so we moved to LA, and at this point now it's just Dale and I. But we basically start recording pretty much immediately, and then we had to audition guitarists because Windup was very convinced we could not be a 3-piece anymore. We had to be a 4-piece band. We tried to bring another South African drummer over because we thought it was important to have another South African, just so we could keep it sort of an element of purity about it. She didn't work out, which was a real bummer because he's a real nice guy. And then we ended up having Josh Freese play on the album. We finished the album, we finished recording, and now we got to find members to play. So we auditioned, and then we found Nick Oshiro. It felt like everything had been such a good journey up until moving to LA that it felt at that point, I almost felt like it was the too good to be true part was very quickly fading to the, man, this is not what I thought it would look like.
It seems like everything is gray and there's no color to behold. They say it's so.
We didn't have an image on the first one. We had 10 different album covers, and I think for a new band to do that, that's a really risky thing to do, and it's in retrospect kind of a not clever thing to do, because I think people got confused, and it's I think if you've reached a certain level, you can do that kind of thing and get away with it.
Seether, they got a CD out called Disclaimer. You may look at this one and say, well, that's not the one I have. They have 10 different pictures for the cover.
I heard about the audition, and there was 17 of us. We did the audition and then drove back that night, and they called me about a week later.
This is your new guy, Pat. How long have you been with them? Did you just hook up on the road?
They were touring through Philly right before they did Ozfest, and my band was playing with their band, and they were like, we hit the bar, and they were like, we need another guitarist. What's up?
My next guests are from Johannesburg, South Africa. They're here tonight performing a song from the CD Disclaimer. Please welcome Seether.
At the time, in the States, we had a channel called MTVX, and I remember Fine Again being played on there, so I was a little familiar with the band. I was in a band before Seether. It was the revolving door of drummers. Finally, they had an audition, so I went and auditioned for the band in Dallas, Texas. They were in the middle of a tour at the time, the opening for Evanescence.
So while our drummer was at the hotel, we auditioned for other guys.
Having grown up on opposite sides of the globe, kind of have a lot of same musical similarities, interests, and bands that we like. They grew up on American music, so it's funny that we kind of have that connection when it comes to music.
And action, Amy.
They wanted us to do Broken with Amy Lee, which came after the first album was done, but they wanted to release it as a single, and I didn't want it to be on the first album because I thought the first album was done. It was a finished piece of work. So we have to do a new thing. But they wanted to rush it out, so the only compromise we had was we would add 9 other songs to the original album, or 8 other songs, whatever the hell it was. And then, what we decided we would call it Disclaimer 2, and they discontinued the first barcode on the first album, so that just disappeared. We had no say in it, but there was at least a compromise we could come up with, because again, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know we had any say in anything. Especially with the previous owners of Wind Up Records, they would bulldoze us and bully us because they knew they could.
Not a place I'd be vacationing anytime soon. I've never done a video that took more than like 14 hours to film.
I'm joined right now by Seether. Very nice. How you guys doing? Your performance was great earlier.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here at Much Music.
Thanks for having us.
The album, Karma and Effect, comes out next Tuesday, May 24th. Make sure you go get it. Now, originally, the title of the album was called Catering to Cowards. Is that true?
Yeah. But someone took it personally, so we changed it.
What cowards were you catering to?
Corporate business in America.
This is day one. This is where all the fights take place. The professionals do their thing.
Shaun will be doing a performance.
It's really warm. Being the announcer dude,
everyone, I'm Dean. Thank you all for
A bunch of
coming
negative
today.
things were said about us for a long time after the second, the re-release of the album came out, and instead of us rolling over and saying, cool, you guys are all right, we suck, we said, well, hey, we're going to make another album that's going to, hopefully piss you off even more.
There was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of there was a bunch of people treating us really badly. This is the effect of that, and there's a lot of stuff that's happened in the past 2 years or the past 3 years to me, and that's affected me, and it came out in this too,
Someone told me years ago, it was like, you want to have the kind of song that as soon as it starts, everyone knows exactly what song it is, right? They want to know, oh, this is that song. And there's no waiting around like, oh, is this what I think it is? Or there's no question as to, okay, this is the song I want to hear, and this is the song that's playing now, so let me crank up the volume. And that was kind of, I think, a subconscious idea behind the intro was to make it one of those songs that is instantly recognizable, and even today still we end pretty much most of our sets with that song because it's the one that people love to really see live. It's one of the bigger ones, and it's a good way to end the set because you kind of put that big old full stop on it and say thank you so much for coming out. Here's that song that we wrote 8 years ago.
Nicest liner notes I've ever seen.
It's kind of small. You need a magnifying glass for this.
But stunning, though. Like, when you guys get the CD, make sure you check it out, because a lot of work went into this. It's not just, the words on paper. There's beautiful artwork.
Well, we wanted it to be like, if you go out and buy and spend money on it, we wanted it to be worthwhile and something cool to have, and to page through. So.
Definitely want to at least explore the possibility of doing an album like that again. Because some people it was more accessible. Like for example, my dad liked it more than the stuff we do.
He just wasn't happy. And like when he was happy, it was the best times you could ever have. When he wasn't happy, it was horrible. Really? Horrible. We all want to be living a somewhat normal life. He had this girlfriend he was in love with for years. And they'd been apart for about 4 years, and they got back together, and it was like he was happier than I've ever seen him. I'm really happy that he has found what I guess he was looking for that we couldn't give him. It wasn't my intention for him to leave. My intention was for us to sit down and talk about it, because I'm the one who has to drop the axe, I'm the one who has to go, look, dude, it's not working out.
Seether frontman Shaun Morgan has checked himself into a rehabilitation center for an undisclosed substance abuse problem. The band had to postpone 3 weeks of their tour, and they have been making the rounds with TV appearances promoting it. Seether was planning on performing acoustically for the 3-week tour in support of their One Cold Night CD/DVD release. About the rehab stint, Morgan said in a statement, quote, "These things are making me sick and could potentially harm me permanently, so I need to take care of them as soon as possible."
The thing we're most proud of, there was a lot of hard times, but I think even through all of that, the band is almost like that light at the end of the tunnel. Well, let's get through this because we've got music to write, or we've got shows to play, an album to make. So it's almost like something to, okay, well, I still have that, and that's, you just keep your eyes on that. If you fall, just try and get up and head for that light at the end of the tunnel.
To keep going, it's like you can look for the positive in a negative situation. It's the whole theme of this album. Or you can go, man, this sucks, and you can harp on that and dwell on reasons to stop doing things and reasons to give up or reasons to call it a day. You have to mentally tell yourself that you have to stop thinking that way. It's pretty life-changing to sit yourself down and say, look, I got to start being positive about shit.
And listen closely, I'm lost without you.
yeah, done mainly band performance stuff so far.
I've bashed myself. Battle wounds. Butterfingers. Hitting myself instead of the drums. So professional.
Day one, rise above this. Only day. That's a wrap.
If this video is able to connect with one person and save a life, it'll be definitely a mission accomplished.
Here to perform Rise Above This from their album Finding Beauty in Negative Spaces. Here they are, Seether!
When Troy was in Dark New Day, we did another tour. And when Pat left, we actually stayed at 3-piece until Troy became available. And he joined in March this year.
Yeah.
So we remembered that he was a fun guy, and we did a tour with Dark New Day.
It was good that I kind of knew these, knew the Seether guys from touring with. We just got pretty tight on those tours, got to know each other. Lots of beers and shots later,
This is a call to all bassists. Email us, give us a little video of you playing.
I heard that.
Congratulations on getting your first South African Music Award. That must be something very special, right?
I'm really proud of it, but I kind of feel like we got we've been nominated so many times. I think they finally just gave it to us because they had to. It's either that or it was just like pity from seeing us lose so many times. But it was I'm real proud of it. I think more so my parents and people at home, like the record company and stuff. There was definitely, I got a lot of messages from people saying finally, because we'd entered every single album that we've released here, and every single time we just got denied by like the one year we were beaten by a cover EP.
Really?
And then the next year we were beaten by like I don't know. It was If I played it for you and understand. But yeah, it's great to get it, but it still kind of feels like I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like I'm kind of a pessimist in that sense, but I think it's I still, like I said, it'd be nice to on my parents' collection mantelpiece type of thing, Normally we never take off more than a year between finishing a tour, writing and recording an album. That album was interesting because we didn't just go in and do an album. We would all come into Nashville and we would have 4 songs to do. We'd knock those out, then we'd leave. And then we'd come back 2-3 months later. So that's why that album took so long to make. Yeah. So we did the album in like 4 or 5 different recording sessions.
Until I took a turn. I'll tell you. Now. It's more like a...
Yeah.
Sonically, the album I think could be a little bit heavier sounding. The directive from the label was, we need this band to start sounding more conducive to an alternative radio sound, which is why Brendan O'Brien came in, try to make it a little bit more alternative sounding, which is fine. I just listen to those albums now and I think, man, we should have just done it heavy and been who we were. But at the time, I don't think any of us really would have had a problem with it, Because I mean, shit, why not try and be a rock band that has alternative leanings?
Chaps are very sexy. They...
Country Song was so named because at the time we were recording, we were coming up with bizarre names for all the songs because we didn't have names for any of them, and there were no lyrics, and Country Song just kind of stuck because we felt that the verse was a little countryish. So, and we've been asked to change the name, and we've steadfastly said no. So it's deceptive, and hopefully people will at least be a little afraid of what they're going to hear when they hear a name like Country Song, but I think it's pretty good.
What time? This is how we make rock and roll.
I'm Frankie. I'm from 96.7 KCal Rocks. Hi.
John.
Hi. So you are Seether.
We are.
So you guys are nominated tonight, right?
We are. We don't know why, but apparently we are. So we can.
In what category?
Best live band.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
Thank you. I don't know if we can, but it's a compliment. We're up there with some like Guns N' Roses and Judas Priest and crazy Foo Fighters. So it's
I think we got a fighting chance in this category.
You might. Yeah, you got some heavy hitters, but you guys are a great artist in your own right. So I think you have as good a chance as anybody.
Hopefully, we I guess we're the kind of band that sort of expects the worst but hopes for the best. So we're probably going to spend a lot of time in the VIP, having a couple cocktails.
Keeps saying that they're going to do some drinking. So.
Well, the thing about this award shows is like it's kind of more of a we know a lot of the bands. Obviously, we've been touring for a while, so it's like a lot of people. It's almost like you get together one night and everyone's in the same room. We all get really hammered, and then we'll see what happens. I'm pretty sure that bad things are going to happen, but.
I made an album with Seether in summer of 2010. We finished it, and we were getting ready to go on tour and stuff. And Amy and I have kept in touch. We got together, and she told me that she was ready to start making another album. I kind of told her my story. I was ready to do something else, and she welcomed me back into the band, and we went into pre-production 2 weeks later.
I think subconsciously we had something to prove because, the sixth album, I don't know that it's one of the most important ones, but I think everyone is important because you have to stay relevant and you have to stay current and you have to have something important to say. And we'd heard so many comments about how we had sold out and become something else, and because we infused melody in our music, which was, I guess, a bad thing, but.
Brendan kind of came in and I think the directive there was to try and make it again a little bit more accessible. Yeah, the video sucked, but the song was cool.
Yeah. We wrote the song originally for the Greatest Hits / compilation of previous singles album, and we just decided it was too good to throw away on that thing, so we left it and saved it for the album. I like that song. I don't necessarily know what it's about, but it's pretty fun to play.
This is Brian. She's the prettiest chick in the band.
It's true. I was working for them previously as a guitar tech at various points, taking care of both Shaun and Dale. Kind of came about, just after the course of them being a three-piece after so long, and they had been discussing adding a fourth member for a very long time. I was at home, doing my own thing while we had time off, and Shaun had called up and he's like, oh, we're thinking about adding another person. I'm like, all right, well, cool, so who's it going to be? Who am I going to be working for? Kind of vibe, And he's like, well, it's actually going to be you. And I was outside pacing in my backyard. I high-fived a tree, and yeah.
And I was an art director for a few different guitar companies, which eventually led me to touring the world with a big rock band. And that was amazing too. And that kind of got me into the role of meeting people from all different areas of the world and different states and all that. The way that this kind of turns around is that I met my beautiful, gorgeous wife, who later on down the road, we get pregnant. Of course, that changed a lot of things for me. I wanted to be the dad at home. I wanted to be present for my family. It was time to make a shift and come back home.
We used our amps, our guitars, and stuff that we sound like live. And to be loud was the point, to be unapologetically loud, to be ridiculously loud, where it's just feedback and squeals and the imperfections are left in. in the music instead of cutting them out, because I feel like they're as important to the songs, and it gives it a little bit more of a chaos energy and like an edge to it I've wanted to have that kind of, my songs sound like that for years, but they just never do, because you try and throw in feedback and everyone's like, you can't have feedback. It's like, well, why not, man? Feedback's fine. Did 2 albums with Brendan, and he's a great teacher, you know, and he certainly has his own approach, and he is very intimidating. He's a legend. After 2 albums of working with him, he'd given me enough confidence that I thought I could do it myself as well. So I owe a lot of that to him. And this time I had a vision that I wanted to get it right. When you have something going on in your head, to make somebody else understand that is quite difficult. So the only way to really make it happen is to be the one trying to make that sound come out of the speakers. And there's also, it comes down to a mixing thing. I just wanted to try and see what happens, you know what I mean? And to be honest, those big name producers are quite expensive as well. To spend tons and tons and tons of money on producers, it doesn't seem like the way to go anymore. Especially if you believe enough in yourself and what you're trying to create. So just chose to roll the dice and see what happens. And I think it's been successful. Sort of getting my hand in a different side of the business as well, because as long as you're being creative, I'm happy, you know.
You know, the whole Poison the Parish thing there's nothing to do with religion at all. For me, what I've seen in the world is that there was a time, especially for, say, our grandparents even, I would say, and perhaps even our parents when they were children, where members of society that held high esteem were held in high esteem were doctors and lawyers and priests, and they were upstanding members of society, and there was no scandal involved, and they were what people used to look up to. You know, you'd have the pastor over on a Sunday to have advice, or you'd go and see him, or with the degeneration of society being the way it is and the way everyone is infatuated with themselves these days, what I see as the new preachers are the social media stars and the reality stars, where you know, the preachers that the kids listen to now are the ones like the Kim Kardashians of the world, man, and that's just horrific. And the fact that kids are becoming less and less concerned about being something of value, but more and more concerned about just being famous, is also terrifying. But that's sort of been proven to them time and time again. That's my whole thing, was that's the, you know, the parish of the kids these days, and the ones poisoning them are these vapid, empty, just selfish, cruel, you know. I just find the irony sickening.
Shaun heard I was going to take about a year off from Seven Dust, and he had been talking to my brother. He was like, "Hey man, what's Clint doing?" We've been friends for a long time, so he invited me to their thing, man. So he's like, "Man, would you come play?" You know, I'm like, "You know what? Yeah, I would love to." You know, and I was going to originally take a year off and do some solo stuff and do some different production work, but I'm like, my wife's like, "Go experience this. You know, go have another experience with another band," and they're brothers already, so it wasn't alone. You know, I already knew them, so I just jumped out and played their songs with them. And you know, we're gonna do this record, and you know, we'll go out and I'll play dates with them, and we'll try to figure it out. You know.
The Seether had sort of a logo for many years, and this was the first album time we sort of changed with the logo, with the art. So that was kind of like a new beginnings with the band, and you know, just sort of again back to this heavier sound. I think there was just a thought to, like, maybe it's a restart, a reboot of the band, if you will. And so there was a change with the art and with the logo and stuff.
It's been 20 years. It feels kind of like it's still a dream sometimes. We've seen the rise and fall of many bands in the past. A lot of bands that I was fans with and friends with. And it is a bit humbling to still be here. Really, all we've ever done is just try and write music that makes me happy and makes us happy as a band. And we don't try and follow any trends or try and fit in with whatever it is that's currently hot on radio. We just try and do the stuff that we like to listen to. So
I've known the guys for 15, 16 years now. So it's like, it wasn't like a get to know each other thing anymore. We were like best friends, you know, me and the whole band. And Shaun would take me out in whatever band I was in. I never asked. He'd call me and say, "Hey dude, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Are you touring? Do you want to, let's go out." I went out to help. I just came out to help. It wasn't even to join the band. And I love that it's organic like that. But when I was on stage and I'm playing, I don't know, man, and my heart was destroyed because I'm like, this feels like home, you know? He says, "Dude, this feels right. Do you want to be in a band? And at the time I was with Saint Sonia, and we weren't touring a lot, and it just felt more like home than there, you know? And I love the guys in Saint Sonia, but it was like every band that you're with, you make sure the songs are there, you know? And Seether always had the songs for sure, you know?
I had written all of the album in 2019. So, and we recorded the drums at the end of 2019, and we recorded the rest of it in January of 2020. So everything was done. It was mixed, mastered. It was good to go. And then March, whatever it was like, oh no, we're all going to grind to a resounding halt. So we thought, cool, you know, we're still going to put it out in June or July, whatever. I think it was originally supposed to be June was the goal, and then March became April, and we're like, okay, well, maybe move it to July, and then April became May, and then we're like, oh, let's hold out hope for July. Well, we decided then let's put it out in August, because I think it looks like lockdown's going to drag out for a while, and you know, I think it's a good thing to put out new music to sort of try and keep a sense of hope going with fans and for ourselves. What I've learned in 20 years is that I now have a different perspective on the world than I used to have. Whereas when I was younger and I started writing music, my perspective was basically me. It was my little bubble around me and my very, very close personal experiences and feelings and emotions. And now I've sort of cast the net much wider, and I draw from what I see to be dangerous, you know, no pun intended, but what I see to be quite ominous looking from the outside in, and how people interact with each other. I think it's quite, we're headed in a bad direction. Lyrically, for me, I took my time with it this time. I really sat down and wrote them beforehand instead of just waiting till the last minute. What was great about it was I got to look at the lyrics more critically, and I actually had time to study them and cross things out and rearrange things. And my other focus was I was really trying to not repeat myself as I've done in the past. And I think it's easy for us songwriters to repeat ourselves, because you sort of fall back on phrases and words that you know have had a lot of weight in the past. You kind of want to keep reintroducing those words to create the familiarity. And I did more work on this album than I did on the last one. You know, there have been albums in the past where I was maybe unsure of some of the tracks on the album, and I wasn't maybe 100% happy with it. But this one, you know, for example, is one of those where I'm about 95% happy with this album, and you'll never be completely satisfied. But we're still taking this really seriously. We still really love this job. We still really love creating music after 20 years of being in a band. And I think that the best way to do that is to pay more attention and really hone in on the things that you might have had as weaknesses in the past, and try and strengthen those. So that was kind of the goal. After 2018 ended, we were kind of all pretty burnt out, and we don't live very close to each other. John lives in Oklahoma City, which is I think 10 to 12 hour drive. Dale lives in Savannah, which is again another 10 to 12 hour drive. Corey lives 3 hours away, which is fine. But, you know, I just kind of did my thing, and I felt really good on this album. And I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And after about 50 something ideas, 40 something ideas, I said, well, that's enough. I'm starting to repeat myself now. So let me go back and look at what I've got and see which ones I think are the best. And then you just sit there and you go, cool. I like these 21. And I started working on those 21. And those 21, when they were done, sent them all to everybody in one big Dropbox folder so they can get the whole experience in one shot. And as it turned out, when we came to recording, I couldn't pick between the 21 to make the album. So we just recorded all of them. So we did all 21 tracks, which is how we got the EP for the Wasteland EP. There's 3 tracks that were from those recordings that are on there as well. And be another EP as well with the remaining songs coming out. That is one song, case in point, where I preferred the demo version, the final product, just because it had a little bit more lo-fi, kind of less distorted guitars, right? But in the studio, we were on a roll, and when you lump it with all the other stuff, it felt okay. We should kind of make it sound a little bit more like the other stuff. The bass is now driving the real meat and potatoes of the song. So I added the drums to it, and then just let my imagination run wild, man. It was one of those things where immediately everybody was saying, man, what is that? What is that? That's different, right? It still retains the element of the band by having sort of distorted guitars and things, but it's got sort of the melodic choices are not necessarily rock choices. I mean, I have Corey's a Native American. He was like, dude, it sounds like a Native American song to me. And I was thinking, well, it had more sort of Arabic influence in the melodies, and maybe even, Indian influences. But anyway, regardless of what it was, I thought it was interesting. Big was a riff that I wrote in 2016 because I just got the news that my dad had cancer. And I was very, very mad about that. And then originally it was a very different title to that riff. That was right before Poison the Parish came out. So then we did 2 years of touring, and I totally forgot that it was even there. But when I was sitting here, it was one of those days when I wasn't necessarily fully inspired. So I was just scrolling through all of these things that I had. And I said, let me see if there's anything that's usable. And that song happened to come up. And I was like, oh man, this is cool. So I dropped it a step down because I wanted it a little bit heavier, a little bit sludgier, and then kind of built the song around that and moved it away from the original inspiration, because I felt I could do a better job of that original inspiration in a different way. So not necessarily an angry one, because the anger of the diagnosis and his subsequent passing away was now over. So now I was more on the melancholy side. So if I wrote a song about it, I would want to do it in that way. But it's always been my understanding that I don't care about what is a current trend, right? I don't care about fitting into a screamo, emo, pop punk, whatever subgenre of rock. I never care about that. And I know we've very often been in the midst of one of those kinds of moments and just stuck to what we do. And I think that I want to always write music that's honest and reflects me and is true to who I am. And I think that if you do that, fans can sense that, and fans appreciate that. I've got fans that have been friends of mine for 20 years, and they say, man, it just keeps getting better. I think that there's something to be said for just sticking to your guns and being who you are throughout it all. And we've had some albums where I sort of strayed a bit from that, and I was trying to be too clever, or I was trying to be maybe too experimental. But I think even in those cases, I was still doing it from an honest point of view. And it always starts with, I'm writing this because this is making my head move. This is making my foot tap. This is making me feel good. These lyrics are me expressing myself because I'm trying to write my diary basically in an auditory form. And that's just what I've always done.
We'll definitely be releasing some new music at some point. Where it's going to be on the timeline is hard to say. Fortunately, we're at a place in our careers now where we, like I said earlier, when you're a baby band, it's like, we need that album, you got to get it out, whereas now we can take a little bit more time, make sure the songs are ready, and then go in and knock it out. But yeah, definitely going to start working on some new stuff and kind of keep an eye out for nothing set in stone yet, but it's in the future. So don't despair, fans. There's something in the pipeline. Just got to wait a little bit longer.